Palestinian militant group Hamas has said that it is ready to discuss new proposals for a ceasefire in Gaza and the release of hostage and Palestinian prisoners.
Senior Hamas official Sami Abu Zuri said the group has accepted a request from mediators to explore new proposals and is open to discuss any deal or any kind of ideas that could lead to a permanent ceasefire, as well as the withdrawal of the Israeli forces from the entire territory and lift the blockade.
The movement's delegation confirmed that the movement is open to any agreement or ideas that end the suffering of our people in Gaza and stop the ceasefire once and for all, and lead to the occupation's withdrawal from the entire Gaza Strip, lifting the siege, providing relief and shelter support to our people, rebuilding and reaching a serious deal for the prisoners.
The decision comes after Gaza Civil Defense Agency said an Israeli airstrike on a residential block in northern Gaza, Beit Laia, killed nearly 100 people on Tuesday. At least 20 children were among the dead. Video footage showed several bodies wrapped in blankets on the ground outside a bombed four-story building. Now, more bodies and survivors were being retrieved from under the wreckage. The United States called the Israeli strikes horrifying. Washington has asked Israel for answers, expressing deep concerns by the loss of civilian life in this incident.
This was a horrifying incident with a horrifying result. I can't speak to the total death toll, but there are reports of 24 children killed in this incident. No doubt a number of them are children who have been fleeing the effects of this war for more than a year now. We have reached out to the government of Israel to ask what happened here. We don't yet know the underlying circumstances. We have not gotten a full explanation from them about what happened. But you step back and look at where we are in this campaign.
The State Department also said it is deeply troubled after Israel's parliament passed 2 laws to prevent the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, from being able to continue its work in United Nations. The United States slammed Israel for not doing enough to help Palestinians in Gaza. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, said Israel's words must match their actions on the ground.
At the same time, the United States has made clear to Prime Minister Netanyahu that 1 year into this conflict, Israel must address the catastrophic humanitarian crisis in Gaza, that the United States rejects any Israeli efforts to starve Palestinians in Jabalia or anywhere else, and that Israel's words must be matched by action on the ground.
The envoy also reiterated that the U.S. threat to withhold arms from Israel and warned Israeli PM that there is no alternative to a UN aid agency in Gaza. She said Netanyahu must address the catastrophic humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
Meanwhile, the IDF announced that 4 Israeli soldiers were killed and an officer was seriously injured during fighting in the northern Gaza Strip on Tuesday. The Israeli Defense Forces said they all served with the elite multi-domain unit, also called Coast Unit. They were killed in fighting in the Jabalia area, which has been the focus of the recent IDF offensive in northern Gaza.
All right, to understand this more, we're being joined by Adrian Kellerman, live from New York. He's a fellow at Arabian Peninsula Institute, terrorism and Middle Eastern scholar, and he's also the author of forthcoming book on Hezbollah. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you, Joseph.
Right. Now, let me begin by asking you, the demand from Hamas has always been rejected by Israel. But for now that Hamas has agreed for negotiations, what could these negotiations entail for the ceasefire to come in place?
Well, there's going to be parts that Hamas is going to be pushing for to make sure that there's still a viable fighting force and a ruling force within Gaza. And there's going to, and from the Israeli side, and the Israeli perspective, this one cannot happen inside Gaza again. Hamas cannot be a political force in Gaza. It cannot be a military force in Gaza. And most of all, there needs to be a release of the hostages. This has been number one this has been top of the discussions from day one. You release the hostages, this takes a whole new perspective. But the hostages are leverage for Hamas, which has a very weak hand and has been decimated and annihilated. This is a Hail Mary.
Mr. Kalman, do you feel a leaderless Hamas is closer to being pushed into a ceasefire deal as compared to earlier? Is there any prospect of that happening, which is better now than it was earlier with Yahya Sinwar not in the picture?
That's a great question, Shivan. And I really think it comes back to yes, there is multiple people that seem to be running Hamas. There seems to be some conflict within Hamas, within the leadership. But I think all comes back to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Are they going to accept the deal? Are they going to allow Hamas to accept a deal?
Right. Now, let's also talk about the fact that Israel has banned UNRWA. Let's say if the ceasefire does come to be, will Israel consider lifting the ban? Because we know that after a ceasefire, well, we need aid in Gaza and in that kind of situation.
Israel will not lift that ban for the sole purpose and the reason that multiple UNRWA officials not only participated in the October 7th attacks, but have been discovered to be full-fledged members of Hamas. So Israel will not allow this to happen. Now, there's this narrative that there are no alternatives to get aid into Gaza, and this simply is not true. There are plenty of other organizations that have not been politicized, and really, UNRWA was hijacked by Hamas, and Israel cannot let UNRWA continue to do that. They control the not just the food shipments and those things, but going down to the very textbooks that children in Palestine, in Gaza, are learning about. It's to brew hatred and sheer anti-Semitism. So UNRWA it's been delegitimized by this conflict. It really has.
Adrian, you had mentioned about Iran, of course, earlier in our earlier exchange. Given the kind of attacks that Israel carried out on Iran, I wanted to just get your thoughts on this. Iran, of course, claims that it largely thwarted the Israeli attack. There are reports which suggest that Israel strategically took out several of its air defense systems, which were guarding a lot of their energy facilities. Was this attack by Israel a precursor for a future attack, leaving their strategic points guardless?
Shivan, that's the same question I've been asking myself, and I lean towards yes. That's a clear message to the Islamic Republic. The first time Israel struck back, it was just one strike after the large barrage, and they took out the same type of system that guarded a nuclear facility. This time they took out a number of S-300 Russian systems that protect the energy system. So the Islamic Republic knows that if you collapse their economy, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. And the message is quite clear. You step over the line again, we're going to hit those.
Adrian Kalman, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure speaking with you and having exchange of questions, which you always answer.
Always a pleasure, Shivan. Thank you.
Thanks.